it's Kristen and it is Winterween. Winterween this year is running from Friday the 9th of January, which is today, to Thursday the 15th of January. So there are some prompts. I have some ideas of the books I'd like to read to fit those prompts. I'm just going to go through them now. I am not going to guarantee that I'm going to get to all of these, but I will definitely get to some. So the first prompt is to read a book in the dark or at night. I often don't do this prompt because reading in the dark strains my eyes. I'm a girl who wears glasses to read and it hurts my eyes to read in the dark. And also I can never read like a whole book at night. If I'm partway through a book, I want to be reading it at every opportunity, not just at night time. So like maybe I'll read a bit at night, but I'm not going to read a whole book at night. 2 is to read a thriller or horror book. For this, I'm going to be reading Suddenly a Murder by Lauren Munoz. This is about a group of like teens who are friends who go to, I want to say like some sort of party at a house, like it's just them, and then someone is murdered and it's like a bit of a whodunit mystery. I'm going to be doing this one on audiobook. Tomorrow I have to run a half marathon distance in my training run, and I like to listen to an audiobook, take my mind off the running by focusing on something, and I figure if I listen on like 1.75 to 2 times speed, which is what I normally do, then I can get through like a third to half of the book probably while out on my run. And then either Saturday afternoon, depending on how I feel, or on Sunday, I want to like tidy around my house a bit, just like do a bit of organization and cleaning and stuff. So I could probably like continue listening to the audiobook and maybe finish it then. So that would be quite nice to read over the weekend on audio. Then the next prompt is to read a book with red on the cover or blood. For that, I am going with A Dowry of Blood. Obviously we have red, we also have blood literally on the cover in the title. This is a book about the brides of Dracula, I believe, and is told like as if the character was talking to Dracula, I think. This has been on so many TBRs. Like every time there's a horror readathon, Summerween, Winterween, Spookopalathon, I always mean to pick this up and I just don't. And like I don't have time to, or it's not a priority of the books that I want to read at that point. So I just don't pick it up. But I'm finally getting to it. I'm finally going to get to it. I'm determined to at least read this. Next we have read a book about vampires or werewolves or witches. Obviously this fits into that prompt, and this book is by S.T. Gibson, which will be I think the first S.T. Gibson I've ever read. But if I find that I want to read something else because I've like got 3 books, then I'm going to pick up A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch by Sarah Hawley. This is fun, rom-com, demons, witches, tension, romance. I really liked the first book in this series, and so I'm excited to maybe get around to reading book 2 sooner rather than later. And then prompt 5, the last prompt, is to read a 2025 release you never got round to. For that, I'm going to pick up Carrion Crow by Heather Parry. This is a gothic story about a young woman who is like trapped in her home, in her attic, I think, by her mother, and her mum just always says that it's for her own good, it's for her own well-being, but like what is really going on? This is a book that I got in a subscription that my volunteers at work bought me for my birthday last year, and it was one of the later books I got, potentially like the last book I got in the subscription, but it came out I think in February earlier that year, and I just haven't really picked up any of the books that were in the subscription. So I was like, let's start with this gothic one. It's quite short, it's only like 200 and something pages, so I thought that is also maybe useful in helping me like have a productive readathon. So if I have the audiobook, I have this short book, I have a book I really want to get to, and then I have this as like a bonus book. Those feel like good picks for me, and like I can read at least a few of those and feel accomplished in this readathon. I think I'm gonna start with this guy, because if I'm reading the audiobook over the weekend, maybe pick the short book that I could hopefully read like today or today and tomorrow, and then I have the audiobook, and then for like the majority of next week, for the rest of the readathon, I can really focus on A Diary of Blood. So those are my plans. So yeah, let's get reading. Winterween, here we go. It's currently Sunday. Here's an update of what I've been reading. So on the first day of the readathon on Friday, I read the first 50 pages of Carrion Crow. It reads quite quickly, it's quite atmospheric. So far, it's just been this young woman locked in an attic room in her family home by her mother, who says that she's preparing her for her wedding to this man that Marguerite, our main character, wants to marry. But all the mum's really doing is like really restricting her food, saying that she's training her in these certain ways by like giving her a sewing machine and certain books, but like restricting anything else for her. And so Marguerite's just like having this really sad existence up in the attic and like wondering when it's going to end. And there's a crow living in the roof. And that is like all that's happened so far. And I get the vibe that that's like all it's going to be. And that it's more like metaphorical, meditative. But like I am intrigued to see where we're going with this. So yeah, I read 50 pages of that, and then yesterday on Saturday I didn't read any of it because I got up in the morning and I went for a run. I was doing like one of my marathon training runs, and I had to run 13 miles, so I put on an audiobook of Suddenly a Murder, which is about a group of teens who have just graduated high school, and so one of the friends decides to throw this 1920s themed party on an island where this old movie that she and her best friend love was filmed. And she's like, it's got to be authentic, we've got to not wear our normal clothes and wear these 1920s costumes, we've all got to give up our phones. And they're just like on this island, and there's like a bit of a storm, and then one of them is killed. And so it's like, who did it? It's like a remote setting where everyone's like trapped, which is like one of my favourite things in like a mystery novel, when you're stuck in one place with only like a certain number of people who could be the killer. Those are like my favourite kinds of murder mysteries, so I enjoyed that setting. I quite liked the 1920s element to it. So I listened to that while I was out on my run, and I was listening at like 1.75 speed, so I managed to listen to I think like 5 hours and 8 minutes of it or something. And so then once I'd come back home and had like a shower, had my lunch, had a cup of tea, I then wanted to like tidy my room and organise a bit, and so I popped the audiobook back on because I had less than 4 hours left, and I just listened to it again at 1.75 speed while I was doing all that. And then I did a bit of like calm colouring while finishing it up, and yeah, it was okay. It was like a pretty average YA thriller. I did guess who the killer was pretty early on, but there was a twist towards the end that I actually did not see coming. But overall, that was like an okay book, so I read that all yesterday. Please excuse terrible lighting. It's dark now and I just have my lamps. I've been reading more of Carrion Crow. This is just kind of gross. Like, I don't like body stuff that's like gross just in like a like a regular way, like not even like body horror where something is like really wrong, and like it's not gory, it's just gross. There's a lot of stuff just to do with like blood and tonsils and like earwax and like hair and stuff like that. And like I said, it's not gory, it's not like horrific in that sense. It's just like it's just gross. It's just like icky. And so that's making me uncomfortable and making this like take me longer to read, because I thought it's quite short, I can like whiz through it, but like it's making me feel because like normally if it's a morning that I have to like run, I would take my book and I would sit on the sofa and I would have my breakfast and I would read my book while I ate my breakfast. But I would not read this while eating my breakfast. So, you know, I'm just sort of making my way through it more slowly than I would like because I can only read so much at a time before I'm like, let's take a little break. It is well written, like I'll say that, like the way it's written, like I think that Heather Parry is a good writer, but I am not loving it. I can't say I'm particularly enjoying it. Like, it's doing its job in that it's like very atmospheric, it's making me feel uncomfortable, but like so uncomfortable in like an icked out gross way that I don't not loving it, which is a shame. But yeah, very atmospheric, doing its job with the gothic elements, but can't say it's a great reading experience. Just got back from going up the road between like shifts at work, and thinking, oh, I'll just like do an update now that I'm back, but it was drizzling and like windy and cold, and I've just realised like I look a bit of a mess, so excuse that. Winterween update. I finished Carrion Crow a couple of days ago, and I have like very mixed thoughts about it. I don't really know like how I feel. From an angle of like appreciating good writing and like thoughtful choices and just like a very atmospheric story that I think like did what it set out to do. It's a good book. Did I have a good time reading it? Did I like it? No. But it's difficult because the elements that I didn't like about it, like how some bits I found quite repetitive and just like how gross it was, like I talked about before, I didn't like those things, and that made me like not like the book. However, can I also like read the book and see the justification for those things in the narrative, in the storytelling, like why the author included it or wrote it that way? Yes. So it's difficult because like, yeah, the elements I didn't like I can also justify, but that doesn't make me like them because I think yeah, like on one hand, I want to give it like a higher rating because I think it's written well, and I think Heather Parry is an interesting author doing interesting things, and like it did make me feel a lot, and it was very tragic, and just like a very disturbing story, and so I want to sort of give it a high rating for that, but I like struggled through it and I didn't really have a great time reading it. Not that like it's a fun story, but I feel like I should still, you know, have a good time reading. And I didn't. So I think I think I gave it 3 stars on like Goodreads and stuff because I do appreciate the writing and the story. But like in my heart, it's like a 2, maybe 2.5 star. So I'm glad I read it still. But I don't want to tell my volunteers like, oh, I finally read one of the book subscription box books, and I didn't have a good time, and I would not widely recommend it to people. I think if you like disturbing, kind of disgusting, tragic, gothic stories about women, very much centering on like mother-daughter relationships, try it. But it's not a book I'm gonna like be recommending to everyone and like lending out, because I think you have to enjoy that type of book to enjoy this. So I had a very weird time with Gary and Crow, and like I didn't really enjoy the reading experience. And then I was thinking like the last couple of books I read have either been like very meh books, like very average, or I've just like not had a great time reading them. And then I started going, do I even like reading? I feel like a lot of readers, when you read like a string of very average books in a row, you question whether you even like reading anymore, until you read a book and you go, no, yes, I do like reading. And for me, that is A Diary of Blood. I picked this up yesterday afternoon, evening time, and I was like, oh, I'll just start it. It's one I've been meaning to read for so long. Like, let's get to it for Winterween. I started it, and then before I know it, I was 80 pages in. This hooked me like from the start. I took a picture of the page and sent it to my sister. So this is just the very beginning. This is my last love letter to you, though some would call it a confession. I suppose both are a sort of gentle violence, putting down in ink what scorches the air when spoken aloud. If you can still hear me wherever you are, my love, my tormentor, hear this. It was never my intention to murder you. Not in the beginning, anyway. I read that, I sent it to my sister, and I was like, let's fucking go. And yeah, it was so nice to just start a book and immediately be hooked and then read it like really fast. I mean, this also helps that it has like quite short chapters. I think like most of the longer chapters are about 10 pages, but then you also have bits that are literally like a page long. So I'm finding it very quick to read. I wasn't reading for that long yesterday, and I got to part 2. I'm 80 pages in, and I'm loving the atmosphere. I'm really liking Constanta as a character. I think she's very interesting. I think her dynamic with Dracula is really interesting, and I'm just like excited to see where this goes. I am loving the gothic horror nature of this. I'm so happy like after having a brief period of questioning whether I even like reading, I've picked up a banger. So I will read more and update you on like further thoughts. Hopefully it will still just be me saying that I'm having a great time and that I think this book is great. So I finished A Diary of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I know I was like raving about the beginning of this, and I did still like the book, but I do feel like the beginning was stronger than the rest of the book. I think the writing throughout was really beautiful. There were like certain lines or paragraphs that I really got swept up in the writing and thought, like, oh, that's like a really beautiful way to say this, or that really like evokes an image or an emotion really well. But the rest of the story after the initial Constanta being turned and becoming a vampire and like learning the ways of being a vampire, it felt like a little bit repetitive, because we have Constanta like becoming a bit not bored, but like their days becoming a bit more monotonous, and then they met Magdalena and everything was like buzzy again and energetic, and they were going out and they were doing things, and their life became like exciting again. And then Magdalena became like depressed, and they were struggling day to day, and then they went off and they found Alexei, and then everything was exciting again, until they decided like they couldn't live like this anymore. So yeah, I feel like I thought the first half of the book was stronger than the second half, because I was so into it at the beginning, thinking like, could this be 5 stars? But it wasn't. I still gave it 4 stars because I did like the writing and I liked the beginning a lot. So that sort of kept my rating high. But yeah, I found it a little bit repetitive. And also like my other slight issue with it, and I know this is difficult because like a lot of vampire stories throughout history and like in pop culture and media and stuff, there's always that line of like, if you turn someone as a vampire, like, are you vampire lovers, or because you've turned them, like, are they your sort of vampire child? And like, if someone sires a lot of vampires, are those vampires considered like siblings because you have the same sire, or are you just like a group all together and you're a family of like husbands and wives and stuff, or are you a family of brothers and sisters? And this does both. And I don't, like, I know that it's a complex thing in like all of like vampire stories in general. It's like always been a question, but yeah, them being considered siblings and like them talking about each other being brothers and sisters, but then also all being lovers and all being Dracula's like husbands and wives, and them all sleeping with each other but also calling each other like siblings, and then Constanta also having sort of a motherly protective vibe with Alexei, but then also them having sex. It, like, the sort of incestuous vampire thing, I know it's like a thing, but I don't I don't know how I feel about it. Don't love the incest vibes. Also, my edition of this, and I don't know if it's in like every edition or just some, but it has a epilogue novella that S.T. Gibson wrote, which is set like years later after the events at the end of this book, and it's actually from Alexei's point of view and is about them like coming back together. And I kind of wish I hadn't read it in a way. I don't think it like really added anything to the story. It was basically just like a bonus sex scene, and I think I preferred where the actual story ended. So the epilogue was not something that I felt it necessary to read. I don't think it added anything. But I did like this book. Like I said, I thought the writing was really lovely. I really liked the first part of the book. But after that, it felt, a bit repetitive and like not a ton happened, like plot wise. So a stronger first half, but I am glad I finally read this, and like it's such a beautiful book. So yeah, I read Suddenly a Murder, which was alright, kept me entertained on my run, was partly predictable, but with like a little twist that I didn't see coming. That was fairly enjoyable, like an average 3-star YA mystery. I read Carrion Crow, which was okay. Again, lovely writing, but also not quite my vibe. So this one's a bit mixed for me, but I'm glad I got to it as a book that was like gifted to me. And then I read A Diary of Blood, which I'm so glad I finally read after having it on like every Winterween and Summerween TBR for ages. So 3 books read. I'm pretty happy with that. And it means I hit the prompt of reading a thriller or horror book, because like all of the books I read count. I read a book with red on the cover. Both of these have red on the cover. And I read a book about vampires. And I read a 2025 release that I never got around to. So other than reading a book in the dark or at night, I hit every prompt. This was a successful readathon. I read 2 physical books, got them off my TBR, and kept myself entertained on a half marathon run with my audiobook. So that is everything I read for Winterween. I'm looking forward to Summerween, even though that is months away. Did you participate in Winterween? If you did, what did you read? Let me know below. How many prompts did you manage to achieve? And I will see you soon with another video. Bye.